everyone. Today we have our another new episode. This is our 605 episodes, and we will discuss on digital trust at workplace. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. Willie Ahil. We have Professor David J. Kelly, very famous in Asia Pacific. We have our new friends, Mr. Frank and Mr. Adam. Thank you for joining today's sessions. First, I would like to give chance, Mr. Willie. What do you mean by digital trust at workplace?
Digital trust. Digital aside, trust is a very basic element of any business interaction. And trust is something you cannot just command just because you're the boss, because you'd be on the receiving end of silent, or being given the cold shoulder, as if you were, if you do not extend trust. And trust is a two-way street. It's a common currency that is used. So in the context of the digital environment, trust as startup founders going out and looking for founders, there's got to be a digital trust element in that they're working for the same purpose, for the same common goal. Trust the startup founder looking for the product and assuming to a certain extent that everybody on his team is on the same page. And as they're progressing with their product, with the MVP, because very easy the concept of trust can be derailed because not everybody's on the same page and people just pulling and running in different directions and all thinking that the other person is on the same page as them. But the sad reality of that is they're not. So some trust is something you need to cultivate as a founder. Startup founder is something that you need to cultivate, and you also need to extend it to the other person. And don't take anything for granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor David J. Kelly, you are working for Boston Consulting Groups and you have a lot of experience from software industries. What do you think about this digital trust? How your organizations handle these things? Especially my students, they are very interested about Boston Consulting Group. So if you share a few of your experience, maybe it will be helpful for my students in Malaysia and other countries.
Well, BCG as a rule doesn't trust anyone. You work there, we don't trust you. Everything is as an employee at BCG, you can't even plug a thumb drive into your computer, even if you're the local admin. I mean, there's copies and you don't have access to the backups that the company has, and you can't connect to your local network with your computer if it's BCG, and if BCG handles it, you have all these levels of device management and all of this other stuff, and I think it's part of that is well founded. I mean, there's no reason to trust a whole lot digitally if you don't have to, and kind of the principle of least privilege or least trust is important in digital security, especially in large organizations. Now with BCG in particular, we're handling all of, first of all, we're not going to talk to someone unless they're like a $100 million company. We're just not even going to talk to them. And then when we do, they're going to be giving us their most sensitive data. We can't afford to trust. We've got to secure their data, and we've got to protect it in every way possible. We have all of these, various data compliance issues, whether it's SOC 2 or GDPR or what have you. And then internally, our policies are very, very strict, in terms of how do we protect people's data? How do we not trust? It's all about protecting our customer data. That's the bottom line.
Thank
Uh,
you.
s- if you want to get into like a company like BCG, though, it's you've got to be a top expert in the world or have a straight A average at an Ivy League university, or they're not even going to give you the time of day. So, without your MBA with a 4.0 average from Harvard, then you've, like, for me, they wouldn't even talk to me until I was the top expert in my field. This just would never happen.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mr. Adam, what you want to share with our audience? You had different look today.
Yeah, it's been a very hot summer in England. It's been 40 degrees Celsius, which is unheard of here. So I got my Indiana Jones hat on, even though I'm inside, but I like to wear it. So, a nice haircut, by the way. You also look different. It suits you. Yeah, thank you. I found this to be an interesting topic today because recently, you know, I like to observe all the emerging online subcultures and digital trends that come and go. And recently, a new-ish subgenre on YouTube has emerged and gained popularity, and it's scamming scammers, basically, where skilled YouTubers who know much about IT, computer science, security, and intelligence and espionage even make entertaining videos where they pretend to be elderly people using voice changes and deep fakes to lure scammers from, or working in rather, India into thinking they have found a new sucker, when in actual fact they have penetrated the scammers' computers and networks and machines to give them a taste of their own medicine, basically, with highly entertaining results, and gone as far as having entire, legal operations shut down. Um, and I think that that is a perfect illustration of an interesting feedback phenomenon in such spheres of activity and like cybersecurity, where technology advances uh, to hack and cheat or steal data from people improve, but also the technology to defend them from all that has also advanced. So it's an interesting chicken and egg feedback loop. So that's all I hope to explore more of in this today's episode. Thank you.
Thank you. We have our new friend, Mr. Frank. Frank, what you want to share with our audience for digital trust at workplace? Mr. Frank? Yeah.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be back here. Well, about the temperature, about the same here in Arctic, and to what a magnificent. Um, if we take a look at trust, um, the people, IT, itself, and these has the possibility of in the work of taking a sort of, we call it sort of stability 2.0. Okay. It was about 45 years ago. Professor, I remember his name right now. It's Professor Klicksberg out of Venice, Argentina. Actually, was the first person who actually put forward a theory of how businesses and corporations should values towards the market itself. And CSR in English at least. Here's the opportunity of creating CSR 2.0. Um, Up until maybe about 2 years ago, there was this awareness in business going digital that everything has to be cybersecurity based from the ground up. Okay, starting from zero. That's a beautiful thing, of course. And then these other concept came on board, AI ethics, which is going to basically work with cybersecurity, so that we have covered the serious actually. In fact, we are also covering the ethical values that our organization is going to deploy with artificial intelligence in this case, and how then, because this is trust, how we are going to behave to each other, because this is not only about the business or the corporation itself. It's about an ecosystem composed of that consists of in this case suppliers, providers, salespeople, of course. We are going to learn from
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Willie, uh, you are expert for startup ecosystem development. So what's happening in Australia, especially how they maintain this digital trust, or is there any better policy you want to share?
I honestly, as such, I don't know nationally what's been implemented. I'm assuming that there's been some policy. I'm going to assume that. My focus has been mainly on, and in the space that I work in, is mainly in startups and building MVPs. And that's sort of just the space that I work in. Outside of that, I have very little experience or come in contact with anybody else. Um, and listening to everybody else, I'm just, um, yes, we are on topic, but for me, the mindset of digital trust is something within a startup environment as it's building. Um, and everybody else is on more cybersecurity. Yes, cybersecurity is part of the digital trusted environment, but it's just something that we don't entertain much to our disadvantage. But it's just something that I don't think about. I'm relying on Norton and everybody else to do the right thing, which may be to my disadvantage. But building startups in the focus nationally, I have yet to see anything different from what was happening like 3 4 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Uh, Professor David J. Kelly, uh, can you hear me, Mr. David?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Especially Mr. Willie actually bring this point for cybersecurity. Uh, so cybersecurity, what is the demand, especially the North American market? Like how you think about cybersecurity? Uh, what is the corporate demands, and what is the opportunity for this cybersecurity and cybersecurity expert?
Well, I think the demand, and it's not just North America. I think the three big hubs are Asia, North America, and Europe. Um, but across the board, the like GDPR, which is the European law, is essentially been adopted across the board in terms of needing to be able to support that level of data security, and the ability and for hackers to compromise these systems has really kind of driven that corporate need to stay ahead of the game. If you're asking for the I think what drives the trend is the risk, and the fact that we know there's a risk, and the tools are just not to compromise these systems are so accessible. It doesn't take a lot. Anyone with the internet connection and a computer and a little bit of time to understand what they're doing can start hacking and getting data, whether it's compromising a major corporation or stealing someone's identity digitally. It's a problem, and it's affected business enough to where it's turned it into a trend to protect yourself, or do whatever it is that you can to do it. And that's what I think drives the trend, especially in companies like BCG, or companies that depend, their customer data, or their data is everything.
Mr. Adam, if you share a few of your experience from Europe, Mr. Adam, and then Mr. Frank, that will be helpful.
Sure. Firstly, I thought David Kelly said something interesting about trust, the word trust. Perhaps the best cybersecurity or security in general comes from a place where one cannot really afford to trust too much. There are so many individuals and companies looking for an in of any kind that they can possibly find. There are lots of good people and honest people in this world who wouldn't hack or steal or try to exploit those who are a bit more naive. But maybe we shouldn't overstate just how many good and honest people there are in this world, or overstate how this world is an inherently good one, where these things only happen now and again, when unfortunately it isn't that much good in reality. There's some, but not as much as we would like. No good deed goes unpunished, and sometimes evil wins. That's a fact of life, sadly. And furthermore, to some of what I said earlier, I think deepfakes will be one of the biggest risks to be on the lookout for. Not only does it pose a threat to cybersecurity, it also poses a threat to more and more people's mental health. That could be, and that this spreading of deepfakes and more convincing deepfakes, that could be a breaking point for people already suffering from tenuous links to reality. So that's one of my biggest worries regarding cybersecurity, deepfakes.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Mr. Frank.
Yes,
Hello?
thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Would you rephrase the question, please?
Yes, my
I have
question
an
is
audio
like
problems.
yeah, I understand. Uh, we want to know more about European
Yes,
market.
yes. Would
Yeah,
you rephrase the question, please? Repeat the question.
we want to know more about European market for cybersecurity.
Right. Okay. Well, okay. The cybersecurity is pretty much covered in Europe. For example, I also work for a company called Bravant here in Spain. We're opening in the U.S. off next month in September 2022. Um, and we're a Microsoft partner. In our case, we have been working with retailers that I mentioned before. In one of the base that we covered using what is called a Microsoft Power platform is basically this cybersecurity and how to be safe and how the data is being treated and so forth. Here in the European Union, of course, we're a lot more conservative. Let's call it conservative. Um, than it could be in the United States, for example, or North America, or even China. We haven't mentioned China, which is quite different. We're more conservative here. In order to explain how cybersecurity or other IT industries work in Europe, we have to realize that there is a difference between let's say the Anglo-Saxon part and the European part. Such two big blocks. Basically, in the Anglo-Saxon part, whatever is not um, regulated is not bid. And here in continental Europe, for example, whatever is not regulated is forbidden. You have to wait until it's regulated in order for you to innovate. So it is a big problem. It is a problem, and it is very different to implement cybersecurity measures, for example, they would be in the United States. I would not say Canada, but in the United States at least, and that here in continental Europe. Okay, so the market here is driving, especially that we have a conflict right. I mean, at our doorstep. That's Ukraine, that's Eastern Europe. Then basically to say, well, how can we solve this? How can we enforce our security measures? And that's one thing that we are taking care of right now, as ourselves and other companies, of course. The market itself behaves depends largely on that difference that I mentioned before at the beginning. Okay, whether or not regulated prior to coming into the market.
Mhm. Thank you. Mr. Willie, uh, also the same questions, and I want to know more about Asia Pacific because you are from Australia. Like China is a very important for economical growth. Asia playing a major role, and Australia also have a very good relation. So in that situations, what do you think? What is the future of the cyber security industries, and how it can be helpful for the youth community when they choose their careers for doing or developing as a cybersecurity expert?
The thing I like about cybersecurity is the assumption that not everybody plays fair. That's the basic underlying assumption. So that's why you have all these different levels of uh, agreements, different levels of authorization. Um, so Australia and cybersecurity uh, plays a lot because a lot of the times, um, one of the increasing aspects now, especially um, in marketing, we tend to see a lot of, like there was mentioned before, the scammers. Um, Scamming is a breach of digital trust because somewhere along the line, either they gather the data legally or illegally. When you go online and people ask, "Oh, do you want to download this thing?" and you're looking at it, and on the face, on the surface, it appears genuine, but at the same time, you have no idea. Then you're relying on the software to tell you otherwise. And some of the software just saying, "Hey, no, don't. Anytime you need to download anything, don't do that because it's just not in our best interest." So in that context, the the China concept is they have a different concept of what is normal to the European and Australian context. Australia is more a byproduct of the European context, um, and they have a different culture thing. I mean, look at the Taiwan issue. They're saying, "Hey, Taiwan is an extension of China," and we say, "Hey, no, that's not how the game's played." But yeah, they don't seem to be listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor David J. Kelly, I have a very specific question. What are the biggest cyber security threat right now? And what are our compliance obligations regarding sensitive data?
Well, compliance obligations depend on where you're located. Like we do a lot of work in China, we do a lot of work in Europe, and it really depends. And in a lot of ways, we've ended up applying, like GDPR is a great example. We just apply GDPR to everything and everyone. The biggest security risk, though, is for like us is our internal employees. It's like my job at BCG is most of the time spent modeling threats. We have there's a bunch of interactive models that I use to do data analysis on network behavior and employee behavior and looking at attack surfaces for various systems inside of our corporate environments, whether that's in Alibaba in China or AWS in Europe or whatever it happens to be. Those threats, though, usually are internal employees or our customer employees. Sadly.
Thank you. Okay. Interesting. Mr. Adam. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, deepfakes could be used to try and frame people, generating a likeness of you doing something compromising in a manufactured, engineered photo or series of photos or videos, when in reality it was someone in a blue suit with ping pong balls all over them. But the likeness and sophistication will be so accurate and well done and convincing that it will trick 99% of people who look or watch such things into thinking it was the person being incriminated in something that they know nothing about, against their will, of course. How to defend against deepfakes? How to defend against such things, such weaponized constructs as almost perfect CGI representation or something? I'm not quite sure yet. As for your question about the UK, the United Kingdom has quite a politically charged atmosphere right now. Our culture is quite divided, including politically, or especially politically, left wing, right wing, centrist, whatever. It's divided people as dramatically as race had done decades, centuries ago. Of course, the current British zeitgeist is very liberal, woke, left wing, and so on. And it's not unheard of for people with divergent and dissident conservative views, for example, to go to prison simply for having a document file, like a digital book, PDF, Word document that they opened just once. And yeah, it's a lot of my friends and colleagues use apps like Telegram and Signal because they were secure at first, but I think now Telegram has become a bit less secure and poses a bit more of a risk for having your data stolen than it did before. And I think a lot of people have moved on to Signal. For I think that's still, last time I checked, still the most secure app against some of the things we've discussed. So a lot of people are using a Signal now, but might only be a matter of time before that becomes like even slightly compromised. Even DuckDuckGo search engine has become a bit less of what it was at the beginning, which attracted people to it in the first place. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frank. Mr. Frank, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mr. Frank?
Yes, it's
Yes.
because camera sometimes. Yes, I can hear you now. Yes. What the question, please, because sometimes it breaks off.
Like, what are the challenges cybersecurity faced in 2022? Can you hear me?
All right. Oh, it's not really my. Yes, I can hear you. Cybersec is really not my expertise. I would say here in continental Europe at least, we to hear or get to get a thing going on in Ukraine. Okay, on and then before that it was I believe it was something about Turkey, some sites from Turkey again Europe. I say continental Europe because there is part of Europe that is not continental the way. So, but I say continental Europe. Um, it was basically that's the information I have from it's on it's general course because this is not really my expertise. So I have my own opinion on things, but I'd rather comment on this.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Mr. Willie, you want to add any points regarding this course? Like, what are the challenges cybersecurity face in this year?
Uh, yeah, cybersecurity is not a topic that I have a lot of expertise on. So I'd prefer just to keep my opinion to myself because otherwise we go into a deep rabbit hole of, espousing things that really don't have any merit. Um,
Okay, okay.
yep.
Okay, yes, Professor David J. Kelly, I think that you are exactly the right panelist who can help us to understand. It may be very helpful. What are the threats cybersecurity has in the year 2022 and how we can overcome from these threats?
Might help if I unmute myself. Like I said, the biggest threat right now, I think, is internal employees. How you get around that is containerization of knowledge and access, trustless security systems. I think, like, we're looking at using blockchain technology to do trustless verification, or at least to be a distributed database or ledger for a trustless verification system, and isolating employees so that they only have access to what they need to have access, and that we have backups that they don't have access to. It's these multiple layers of containerization and constant modeling of threats, and the application of AI in security. The biggest threat I'd say in 2023 is your employees, if you're a company, especially a big
Okay.
company.
Mr. Adam.
Oh, sorry, I'll be right back. I just need to get a drink. So you could carry on with that. I'm just going to.
Yes, I totally agree with that. One aspect, 2 years ago, I worked for Kelly, which is an international. I did some freelance work with them, and everything was compartmentalized in the concept that if you didn't have access to the level of incoming and outgoing data, you were not allowed, and they constantly put out feelers and tested you as a part of the corporation, whether you complied or didn't. And when you didn't, it popped up really fast. Now, whether you were complying with the cybersecurity threats, uh, because they have a lot of data, I can understand David's concept of like the greatest threat is more the internal employee within, or not knowing or willfully, causing the breach within the corporation sector. And so one of the things they did was instantaneously, the moment you breach or accepted an email that was not, the email was not deep fake, but it more social engineering in the context that it looked like what the others were doing, but we just missed the point. So yeah,
Mr. Adam.
thank you.
Mr. Adam.
Hi, Sharif. I just wanted to say I think the next biggest hot topic concerning security and cybersecurity will be safeguarding brain implants such as Neuralink. Goodness knows what else is coming against breaches, hacking, remote penetration. It's interesting to observe technological trends like back when people used what we now call dumb phones, just texts and calls. How many of those people using dumb phones said back then, I'll never use a smartphone. They look so addictive. You see everybody's face buried in these things, and then after a few years, the pressure to kind of catch up with everybody else gets stronger and stronger, and they acquiesce and buy a smartphone. And a lot of people are saying that about microchips inside the body. Of course, there are some people who have done that already. Like people related to special members only, like nightclubs or sophisticated places of employment. And there's also like a more practical use medicinally as well. If you have like a chip with some real data on it, and someone like a medic can scan it, and it shows your medical data and your records, so they know better what to do and what not to do when they're treating you. And I think again that kind of societal pressure that you saw with other previous generations of technology will apply eventually to things like microchips and Neuralink, and lots of people who put off purchasing such a thing or getting something like that installed will eventually relent and would no longer want to miss out. So it's not a question of if, it's when Neuralink comes out and more and more people get them, how do we protect Neuralink users from malicious intent and bad actors? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. You want to add any point?
Yes, that's very, very interesting what they mentioned right now. Although it is not digital trust in the workplace, neurotechnology does require some, at least some, right now, some level of let's privacy or just an ethical construction. It has, a matter of fact, it was in December 21, I believe. Yes, December 21, with the work of Dr. Raphael Yuste, a professor of is the number one neurobiologist in the planet right now, and Professor Raphael Yuste out of Columbia University in New York. Okay, being the main ideologue of what is called the BRAIN project. BRAIN is an acronym, and basically the founder of modern neurotechnology. Basically achieved the first achieved that the first neuro rights were recognized constitutionally in the first country ever. In this case, is Chile, the Republic of Chile in the tip of South America. Included these neuro rights in their constitutions. So there are defenses right now. This is digital trust, of course, but in case of neurotechnology, it's not going to be in the workplace anytime. Although it will be in the medical field, that we know about. That's I only wanted to point that out because that's really an interesting point in regards to digital trust.
Thank you, Mr. Willie. Anything you want to add on digital trust? Can you unmute, please?
Sorry, that was my bad. Not at this point in time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Professor David Jekali, what's your concluding remarks for today's session?
Well, in this day and age, you can't trust. Don't trust. Don't download things off the internet. Try not to connect to the internet. Just the more isolationist and untrusting you are, the more secure you'll be.
Okay. Very interesting. Mr. Adam, what's your concluding remarks for today's session?
Thank you, Sharif. Sorry if I kept pinballing off topic. Yeah, Mr. Frank said something interesting. It made me think when he mentioned the word ethics that one of the obvious first things to do regarding the issues we mentioned throughout, is to draft new ethical guidelines and new legislation to protect people's digital privacy and guidelines to safeguard them and what to do, and their data information. But the problem is, of course, people break rules and do illegal things anyway, and the same goes for governments and alphabet agencies. How many black sites have they got all over the world? So even those who we have governing us also break rules. So it's always a good idea to try and teach yourself how this technology works, so that you become more savvy about technology, and you know how to defend yourself without relying on like engineers or specialists or consultants, is to learn about cybersecurity yourself, and because you've only got yourself to help defend yourself from anything. So yeah, good topic. Those are my final thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frank, what's your concluding remarks? Mr. Frank, what's your, yeah.
Just with regards to,
What,
yeah, with
what's
regards to,
your
I'm sorry.
what's your concluding remarks for today's session? What's your concluding remarks? We are closing the session.
My computing. What? I'm sorry.
What's your closing
Oh, right.
remarks?
I'm sorry. I have these bad my closing remarks. Sure. Okay. As I said at the beginning, there is also a young researcher from Brazil that is having is wonderful comments and observations. We have the trust in the workplace. Specifically, we have cyber AI ethics that we have to deploy at a professional level already. We have the opportunity of building what could be the corporate social responsibility 2.0. On from the private sphere, now we cannot expect right now the governments are running around headless because of the problem with energy and the problem with food supply and the problem with West, called the West, North America and Europe in general. Okay, so it's going to have to come from the private sphere and the private uh, companies like Microsoft, Google, IBM. As far as I know, I am going to research BCG. By the way, David, now that you are here, it's very interesting. These are these companies that separately they are basically putting forward, proposing a series of ideas and initiatives, and a different their own of how it should work. We could build together all these big companies. We could build together a CSR. We do need it if we are to compete in a completely and totally globalized world.
Thank you, Dr. Mr. Willie. What's your concluding remarks?
Yes. Yeah, I'm just, I suppose, not so much stuck in the startup environment, but working in this space. A lot of the content of what's been spoken about tonight sort of just not so much flies over my head, but I just have no contact with, or um, no interaction with, more like. Um, so in the context of a startup environment and building your product, you're engaging your customer. A lot of this stuff is not on the radar at all, and I think it should be more emphasized more, as in the security of whatever you're building is really important, because otherwise, if you build something on a how do you want to phrase it? shifting sand. It's going to be like a sinkhole, you build something on top, and then the moment you launch and scale, the whole ground just opens up underneath you, and bang, you're gone. And yeah, really, really great topic, really great. I really like the concept of, you know, um, cybersecurity within the startup environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor David Jekali, you want to add any points for our audience or?
Well, I mean, I know people. Hold on. I know people, kind of think maybe I was joking, but I really am not when it comes to not trusting anything and anyone. That's like not a joke. In terms of learning about security, you might try. There's some simple threat modeling tools, which kind of, if you learn how to use them, can kind of give you a better idea of how software can be compromised. Learn a little bit of hacking, I think, is always a good skill set. I mean, I think just learning how viruses and Trojans and hacks and things work is better security than any stupid virus. Like, I've never gotten a virus on my personal computer for more than 2 decades, or more. And I don't use any of that ridiculous virus scanning stuff. I just don't do things that I write my own viruses, cause problems that way. I don't need other people to muck up my machine. But yeah, I mean, just a lack of trust and understanding how those things work, I think is probably the most important tool.
Thank you. This is an excellent discussion, and I'm sure that it may be very helpful for our audience because our target is most of the young people. We want to develop the skills of the young people. We help them want to help them by this World Talent Economy Forum. So if you have any questions regarding today's session, you directly can communicate with the speakers. I request all of our audience and speakers, please share our content with your government agencies, with corporations and academia. And we have a lot of interesting projects. We are organizing Tesla conference. We are organizing different kind of research projects and different academic activities. And this month we are shifting our activities in South Asia. Hopefully through this process we can engage with more bigger audience. So if you have any questions, any idea or any strategy, you can share with us. And beside that, tomorrow we have our regular debate. I believe we already sent invitations to all of our speakers, those who want to join. And tomorrow's debate is technology is making many jobs obsolete, and agree and disagree. So there is a government side and opposition side. So I want to invite you all for tomorrow's debate. And beside that, we are launching our research project. So those who want to collaborate with us, we are happy to collaborate, and especially we want to collaborate with BCG. So BCG has any kind of policy to collaborate with this kind of a small think tank. Maybe Professor David J. Kelly, you can share. Then beside that, our European friends and our Australian friends, if you have any better idea, you can share with us, because we are engaging with more peoples, more grassroots level people. So we may need more support and more collaborations, and we can ensure that we can bring most of the talented people from the grassroots level and with modern science, engineering, and technology. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. Thank you, Mr. Willie, Professor David J. Kelly, Mr. Adam, and Mr. Frank for joining today's session. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Bye, everyone.